Thank you, Dean Makarov. I saw you guys all walking in here today, and the last time I actually walked to Millett Hall was on Mother's Day of 1990. I know that seems like a long time ago, and I don't think any of you were born yet, right? And I was walking to graduation with my mother and the rest of my family. And as we walked down Talawanda and into Millett, my mother looks at me lovingly and says, "Well, Ruth, at least you got a 4.0 in your extracurriculars." Every mother is looking for a moment of pride as she walks her child to graduation, and mine was not going to be about my regular GPA. Her backhanded comment really was an indication that I spent most of my time here at Miami doing things outside the classroom. We'll talk about that in a second. But I was so excited to be graduating, as the dean said. I promised my parents I would get out in 4 years, and I did. So while my excitement the last time I was in Millett Hall is very different than your excitement, I know yours is probably fueled with a little bit of different emotions. I watched you come in here today. You've been here, 24 hours? Probably a little anxiety, a little nervousness, a little, who are these people sitting next to me? And I promise you, you'll be fine. If you can survive the next 10 minutes of what I have to say, you are going to crush the next 4 years, I promise. So bear with me as I tell you just a few quick stories about my journey, and then we'll pass it back so you guys can get started on yours. I was reflecting on what it felt like to be a first day or first week student here, and I started to remember all of the little moments that happen. The first time you meet your roommate, the first time you walk down Slant Walk, the first time you get a slice of Bruno's, the first time you play what I called alarm clock roulette, which is how late can I sleep in and still make my 8 o'clock class? I promise you, everyone here who has an 8 o'clock class on Monday, you'll be doing the exact same thing. All of those little moments, as I like to say, as the dean wants you to start to think about your plan, I'm going to say that your plan is going to be fueled by all of those little moments, which will become a bit of a constellation. Think of it like a group of stars. And every time you have those experiences and moments, the constellation will get brighter. And the pathway that you'll take will be far clearer. I was one of those that didn't raise their hands. I had no clue what I was going to do when I got into Miami. I was just thrilled to be here. And in fact, when I graduated that May in 1990, I actually still had, sorry, Dean, I still had no plan. I had no idea what I was going to do, but it turned out okay. So let me tell you about a memory I had my first day of moving in and how it started my little moments. So you guys all moved in yesterday. You get your stuff in there. Your roommate shows up. Well, I put my stuff in room 140 of Emerson Hall. Who are my Emerson, South Quaders, right? And I'm waiting for my roommate to show up. I don't know who she is. There was no social media. There was no email. There was no texting. We just sort of met that day. She walks into the room, looks at my stuff, looks at me, turns around, looks at her parents, shakes her head, and walks out. You're going to collect stories like this that you can't make up. And I know you all experienced this because you all met your roommates yesterday. My roommate, her name was Christy. I actually never saw her again. She walked out and walked down the hall and talked to the head resident and said, "I am not supposed to room with her. I'm supposed to room with a softball player." And clearly I was not a softball player. I'd never actually played softball a day in my life. And something in housing got mixed up with the athletes wanted room with the athletes, which I totally appreciated and didn't have a problem with. So I waited around for a room assignment for a new roommate. Never got one. So in a year when there was actually overflow housing in the basement of Peabody, because there were too many students and not enough hall rooms, I got a first floor, air-conditioned, single. I hit the jackpot. I didn't have anybody waking me up in the morning when I had a 10 o'clock and someone else had an 8 o'clock, but I also had to face a reality, which was that I didn't have somebody to go to the dining hall with. I didn't have somebody to talk to at night. I didn't have somebody to compare notes to. So I had to make friends. My corridor became part of my friend group immediately. And so that's one of my little moments that I remember so distinctly, and that meant that when I went to Anderson Dining Hall, I had to, make more friends. And we were in line one day, it was about the second day of school, and I remember meeting these two guys. They lived in Dodge, and their names were Bob and Terry. They were roommates from Cincinnati. And I started having lunch and dinner with Bob and Terry and their larger group of friends. And all of a sudden, Bob and I start to do some campus activities projects together. Sophomore year, we meet up again. He gets a vice president on the student government, and I'm on lecture board. Junior year, I'm on the Greek system. He becomes another thing. Anyway, by the time we're seniors, Bob, this guy I met the first year, is now student body president. And he and I have a kinship for doing some political science things. And we become more than just friends, but just really good colleagues because we worked together outside the classroom. So fast forward to that May 1990 when I walked on this stage and got my diploma. I had no idea what I was going to do. A few months later, Bob called me and left me a voicemail. So I just want to give a little PSA to your parents. When they leave you a voicemail, listen to it. Because I listened to that voicemail on my parents' landline that summer, and it was Bob saying, "Hey, Ruth, there's a job I think you should apply for." I called, I got a job interview, I showed up, and I started work a week later. Now, it was not the way most people get jobs. This was a scrappy campaign for a statewide candidate, and I lasted 2 months, speaking of job changes, mainly because we lost. I made $2,000, but I built more relationships based on my experiences at Miami and how to do that. And I got myself a job, my first real job out of college, 9 months after graduating, on the staff of the governor of Ohio. And I'll tell you with all certainty, my next two promotions, the next two previous 2 years and 2 years, were related exactly to things that I did here on campus. When I started a Miami Service Network, and then I also was playing right into my major, which happened to be speech communication. I ended up being a speechwriter, a press secretary, and a chief of staff at the age of 25. So I'm here to tell you that every collection of all those little moments that you start today will follow you, and that constellation will help you guide your way. So as you think about what is it that she wants me to take from this story that she just told me, I have 3 very quick things. The first is you may not like to network, but you will build a network here. The people sitting around you will become a part of that network. The people that you are rooming with will become some of your lifelong friends. You might meet your spouse. It might be a Miami merger. You never know. You might work with folks. You might actually work with them years past being here, which is my experience. I'm still connecting with old Miami friends 25 and 30 years later. In fact, my very first class, my very first day was in calculus. And I wasn't the best math student. So I looked next to me, and there was a woman there. Her name was Jen. And I leaned over and I said, "I think you live in Emerson with me." She said, "Yeah." And I said, "Could you help me through this class? Because I'm not going to pass without some tutoring." And she volunteered, and she got me through first-year calculus. Last night, Jen and I had dinner at Mac and Joe's. She moved her daughter into Peabody yesterday. 33 years later, we're still business colleagues, friends. We've been to each other's weddings. And I attribute my success first semester to her. And likewise, my friend Ed sat next to me in computer science class. I know you guys don't have intro to computers because you already know how to use them. But back then, we barely knew how to turn them on. And I did the same thing for him. And he and I still communicate weekly. So by these little moments, you will create a network that will last with you and support you wherever you go. So that's the first. The second is, you may not know what you want to do, but be open to what I call the spark. So my first semester of sophomore year, I took a class which used to be called, I'm going to see if I can get this right, used to be called COM 135. It still exists, but it's called STC, right? I got that right? StratCom 135, which was your introduction to speech communication. I took that class, and it was probably my first A here at Miami, and I was like, this I love. Everyone else in my class was freaking out. I hate public speaking. And I was like, this is my jam. And I followed that pathway all the way through and became a speech comm major because of one class. I didn't know it was going to come, but I had to be open to the spark when it did. So I encourage you, you might find it in the most unusual places, but be open to it when it hits you. And the last is say yes to everything that someone offers you to do outside of the classroom extracurricularly. Meaning if your roommate asks you to hang a flyer with them for something, say yes. If someone invites you to go to a lecture, say yes. If someone invites you to a committee to plan an event, say yes. I said yes a whole bunch of times my freshman and sophomore year, which led me to leadership positions, organizational support for other projects, and lots of awards my senior year. And I can say that all of those moments of saying yes supported me throughout my entire career. And in fact, when Chris found me through an unusual way, I said yes, which is why I'm here today. I appreciate the 10 minutes or so of attention you've given me, because I know that's about all you have this early morning after your first night here. And I wish you all the very best of luck. Your constellations will collect and will guide you on your way. And I just want to say I'm excited you're in those seats because the future is bright. The gifts that you bring both Miami and the community will be great. And I'm really glad I'm not in your seats trying to take calculus again. Thank you very much, and very best of luck to all of you.